Have you ever wondered why some people are respected the moment they enter a room, while others spend years trying to prove themselves and still remain overlooked? The answer is rarely intelligence. It isn't beauty, it isn't money, and surprisingly, it isn't even confidence. Because people don't decide your worth based on what you say about yourself. They decide it based on the patterns you repeatedly show them. Human beings are constantly observing each other. Every conversation, every reaction, every silence becomes information. Long before someone consciously forms an opinion about you, their brain has already started collecting evidence about your value. This is why respect is almost never requested. It is quietly earned. Most people unknowingly teach others to underestimate them. They apologize for existing. They over-explain every decision. They chase approval from people who have never earned the right to judge them. They tolerate disrespect because they fear rejection more than they value themselves. Then they wonder why nobody takes them seriously. But there are a few people who never have to demand respect. They don't raise their voices. They don't constantly remind others of their achievements. They don't seek validation. Instead, through small daily behaviors, they silently communicate one powerful message. I know my worth, and I don't need your permission to believe it. Robert Greene often explains that human nature is driven less by words and more by perception. People rarely judge you based on your intentions. They judge you based on your actions, emotional control, and consistency. That is why two people can say exactly the same sentence, yet one sounds powerful, while the other sounds desperate. The difference isn't language. The difference is the behavior that came before the words. Every action you repeat becomes your reputation. Every boundary you refuse to enforce teaches people how they can treat you. Every unnecessary explanation tells people you're asking for approval. Every emotional reaction reveals who controls your state of mind. Whether you realize it or not, you are teaching people how valuable you believe you are, and they usually believe you. The uncomfortable truth is that respect begins inside your own mind before it ever appears in someone else's. If you secretly believe your opinions don't matter, others will slowly begin treating them that way. If you constantly seek reassurance before making decisions, people assume you lack certainty. If you accept disrespect simply to keep everyone happy, you quietly communicate that keeping peace is more important than protecting yourself. This has nothing to do with arrogance. In fact, the strongest people rarely appear arrogant, because real confidence is calm. It doesn't need attention, it doesn't compete, it doesn't perform, it simply exists. Think about the people you naturally admire. They probably aren't the loudest person in the room. They're often the most emotionally stable. They don't panic under pressure. They don't argue over every criticism. They don't feel obligated to win every conversation. There is something deeply attractive about someone who remains centered while everyone else is controlled by emotion. Why? Because emotional stability signals inner strength, and strength creates respect. Unfortunately, modern society encourages the opposite. We're taught to seek likes instead of character, approval instead of principles, popularity instead of integrity. Many people spend years building an image while completely neglecting the person behind it, but images disappear, character remains. Eventually, every mask falls away, and what people remember isn't what you claim to be. It's how you consistently behaved. Over the next few minutes, you'll discover 7 subtle behaviors that quietly teach people your worth without ever having to say a word. These aren't manipulation techniques. They're not tricks to control others. They're habits that naturally emerge when someone genuinely respects themselves. And perhaps the most surprising part, every one of these behaviors begins long before anyone else notices. It begins with how you speak to yourself, how you make decisions when nobody is watching, how you respond when life becomes uncomfortable. Because before the world decides your value, you already have. The first behavior may seem simple, but it immediately separates emotionally secure people from those constantly searching for validation. The first behavior that quietly teaches people your worth is surprisingly simple. Stop explaining yourself to everyone. At first, this may sound cold, even arrogant, but it isn't. There is a profound difference between communicating your decisions and constantly defending them. Most people spend their lives seeking permission without realizing it. Every time they make a decision, they immediately feel the need to justify it. I chose this because I know it sounds strange, but I hope you understand. I'm sorry if you don't agree. Notice how these phrases reveal something much deeper than politeness. They reveal uncertainty. Robert Greene often points out that human beings are experts at reading emotional signals beneath words. We don't consciously analyze every sentence, but we instinctively sense confidence or insecurity. When someone constantly explains themselves, people unconsciously assume one thing: this person doesn't fully trust their own decisions. And once that perception forms, respect slowly begins to disappear. Think about the people you admire most. Do they explain every choice they make? Rarely. When they decide something, they remain calm. If an explanation is necessary, they give one. If it isn't, they move on, because they understand something most people never learn. Not everyone deserves access to your reasoning. Many people don't ask questions because they genuinely want understanding. They ask because they want control. They want to test your certainty. They want to see whether your confidence can be shaken. And every unnecessary explanation gives them another opportunity to question you. This doesn't mean becoming secretive. It means becoming selective. Imagine someone asks why you're changing careers. One person spends 15 minutes defending every detail. They talk about salary, the future, family pressure, personal dreams. They hope that eventually everyone will approve. Another person simply smiles and says, because it's the right decision for me. Then the conversation ends. Who appears stronger? Usually the second person. Not because they're smarter, because certainty speaks quietly. Insecurity speaks endlessly. This is one of the strange realities of human psychology. The more desperately you try to convince people, the less convincing you become. People trust confidence far more than explanations. Why? Because confidence communicates that you've already done the thinking. You no longer need public approval. Many people confuse kindness with self-sacrifice. They believe saying no requires a detailed apology. They believe protecting their time must always be justified. But emotionally mature people understand something different. Your boundaries don't become valid because other people agree with them. They're valid because you decided they matter. Imagine someone asks you to do something that drains your energy. Instead of saying, I wish I could, but I've been really busy lately, and honestly, I've had a stressful week. Simply say, I'm not available. Silence, nothing more. You don't owe everyone access to your private life. You don't need to convince people that your limits are reasonable. Healthy people respect healthy boundaries. Those who become angry usually benefited from you having none. This is why learning to disappoint people is one of the greatest forms of emotional freedom. Not because you enjoy disappointing others, but because you stop making your self-respect dependent on their happiness. Many individuals spend years becoming prisoners of other people's expectations. Every decision is filtered through one question: what will everyone think? Eventually, they forget to ask the only question that truly matters: what do I think? The tragedy is that approval never truly satisfies. Once you earn it, you become afraid of losing it, so you explain more, please more, hide more, pretend more, until one day you realize you've built a life that everyone approves of, except yourself. Greene reminds us that power often belongs to the person least desperate for validation, not because they reject people, but because they are no longer emotionally controlled by other people's opinions. There is incredible freedom in calmly accepting that some people will misunderstand you, some will judge you, some will dislike your decisions, and that's okay. Because respect isn't built by making everyone comfortable. It's built by remaining true to your principles even when approval disappears. The strongest people aren't fearless. They've simply stopped negotiating their identity with every person they meet. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. Ask yourself one question. Am I sharing this because it will help, or because I need someone else's permission to believe in my own decision? That single question can change the way people see you, but more importantly, it can change the way you see yourself. Because the moment you stop asking the world to validate your choices, the world begins seeing someone who no longer needs permission to know their worth. The second behavior that quietly teaches people your worth has nothing to do with your appearance, nothing to do with your education, and nothing to do with your social status. It is your ability to control your emotions when everyone else loses theirs. Most people believe power comes from speaking louder, winning arguments, having the final word, but real power looks completely different. Real power is remaining calm while someone else is trying to provoke you. Robert Greene often explains that human beings naturally test one another. Sometimes these tests are intentional, sometimes they happen unconsciously. People criticize you, ignore you, challenge you, interrupt you, disrespect you, not always because they hate you, but because they're watching one thing. How emotionally stable are you? The moment someone realizes they can easily control your emotions, they've discovered they can control you. Think about it. If one negative comment ruins your entire day, who actually has the power? If someone's opinion keeps replaying in your mind for hours, who is directing your emotions? If a stranger on the internet can make you angry within seconds, who is truly in control? This is why emotionally reactive people often lose respect without realizing it. Every emotional outburst quietly sends a message. My inner peace depends on what other people do. Strong people understand something different. Not every battle deserves a response. Imagine two people are insulted in public. The first immediately argues, raises their voice, attempts to prove they're right. Everyone watches the conflict grow. The second person simply looks at the individual, smiles, and continues walking. At first glance, people assume the second person lost, but psychologically, the opposite usually happens. Because emotional control creates mystery. It forces people to wonder, why didn't that affect them? Nothing unsettles emotionally unstable people more than someone who refuses to become emotionally unstable with them. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It means choosing when they deserve expression. Many people confuse emotional control with emotional numbness. They're not the same. Emotionally mature people feel anger. They feel disappointment. They feel betrayal. The difference is they don't immediately obey those emotions. They pause. They observe. They think because they understand an important truth. Feelings are temporary. Decisions made during intense emotion often become permanent regrets. This is why Greene encourages observation before reaction. Observe your anger, observe your fear, observe your ego. The moment you become aware of an emotion, it begins losing control over you. Most arguments don't continue because of facts. They continue because two egos refuse to surrender. Each person becomes less interested in truth and more interested in winning. But winning every argument often costs something much greater: your peace, your reputation, sometimes even your relationships. Powerful people understand that silence is often stronger than explanation. Walking away is often stronger than revenge. Patience is often stronger than immediate action. Look closely at leaders who naturally command respect. They rarely react impulsively. When criticized, they don't immediately defend themselves. When insulted, they don't instantly retaliate. When challenged, they think before speaking. That pause changes everything because it communicates one powerful message. My emotions work for me. I don't work for them. Unfortunately, modern life rewards emotional impulsiveness. Social media encourages instant reactions. Breaking news encourages panic. Online arguments reward outrage. People are constantly pushed toward emotional extremes, but emotional discipline has become increasingly rare, and rare qualities naturally become valuable. Imagine someone sends you a disrespectful message. Your first instinct may be to respond immediately. to defend yourself, to prove them wrong. Instead, you wait an hour, a day. Sometimes you realize no response is necessary. Sometimes your emotions settle. Sometimes the problem disappears on its own. That single pause protects your dignity, because once words leave your mouth, you cannot take them back. Greene reminds us that people reveal themselves over time. If you remain patient, others eventually expose their own character. The impatient person always reveals more than the patient observer. This is why emotional control isn't weakness, it's strategic strength. It allows you to gather information while everyone else is busy reacting. It protects your peace, it protects your reputation, and perhaps most importantly, it protects your freedom. Because no one can manipulate a person who refuses to surrender control of their own emotions. The strongest individuals don't need to dominate every room. They simply refuse to let the room dominate them. And when people notice that calm certainty, respect follows naturally, not because you demanded it, but because your behavior quietly proved your worth. The third behavior that quietly teaches people your worth is one of the hardest lessons most people will ever learn. Learn to say no without feeling guilty. At first, this sounds incredibly simple. It's only 2 letters. One small word, yet for millions of people saying no feels almost impossible. Why? Because from childhood, many of us were taught that being a good person means making everyone happy. We learned that kindness means sacrifice, that love means always being available, that saying yes makes people like us. But over time, something dangerous begins to happen. Every unnecessary yes slowly becomes a betrayal of yourself. Every time you ignore your own needs to satisfy someone else's expectations, you quietly teach people one lesson. My time is less valuable than yours. And people believe what you repeatedly teach them. Robert Greene often reminds us that people naturally push boundaries, not because they are evil, but because human nature is constantly searching for limits. If someone asks for a small favor today, and you immediately agree, tomorrow they ask for something slightly bigger, then something bigger again. Eventually, what once felt like generosity becomes expectation. They no longer appreciate your help. They assume they'll always have access to you. This is why people who never say no often feel the most exhausted. Not because they have difficult lives, but because they've given everyone unlimited access to their energy. Think about someone who constantly answers every phone call, replies to every message instantly, accepts every invitation, agrees with every request, avoids every disagreement. At first, they seem kind, but over time, people stop respecting their time, because anything that's always available is rarely appreciated. Scarcity creates value, and your attention is one of the most valuable things you possess. Every hour you spend trying to satisfy people who don't respect your boundaries is an hour stolen from your own goals, your own peace, your own future. Successful people understand something uncomfortable. Every yes automatically becomes a no to something else. Say yes to unnecessary drama, and you say no to your peace. Say yes to constant distractions, and you say no to meaningful progress. Say yes to everyone else's priorities, and eventually you say no to your own life. This is why emotionally mature people don't apologize every time they protect their time. They understand that boundaries are not walls, they're filters. They allow respect to enter and prevent exploitation from staying. Many people fear that saying no will make others angry. Sometimes it will. But here's the truth. Healthy people respect healthy boundaries. Only those benefiting from your lack of boundaries become upset when you finally create them. Read that again. The people who truly care about you don't expect unlimited access to your life. They understand that you have responsibilities, dreams, limits, and moments when you simply need space. Someone who becomes offended because you respectfully said no often reveals more about their character than yours. Another reason people struggle to say no is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of disappointing others. But ask yourself something. How many times have you disappointed yourself just to avoid disappointing someone else? How many opportunities disappeared because you couldn't protect your own time? How many dreams remain unfinished because everyone else's problems became your responsibility? Eventually, you realize something. If you never prioritize your own life, nobody else will do it for you. This doesn't mean becoming selfish. There's a huge difference between selfishness and self-respect. Selfish people ignore everyone. Self-respecting people simply refuse to abandon themselves. Imagine someone asks you to do something that completely destroys your schedule. Instead of inventing excuses, instead of apologizing repeatedly, instead of lying, simply say, "I appreciate you asking, but I can't commit to that." Then stop talking. Silence often feels uncomfortable, especially for people who are used to over-explaining. But confidence doesn't rush to fill every silence. It allows the answer to exist on its own. The more calmly you protect your boundaries, the more seriously people begin to take them. Over time, something remarkable happens. The same people who once ignored your limits begin respecting your decisions, not because they changed, because you did. People almost always adjust to the standards you consistently maintain. If your standards constantly change, their behavior constantly changes. If your standards remain firm, respect quietly grows. Your worth isn't determined by how much you sacrifice for everyone else. It's determined by how much you respect yourself while still treating others with kindness. Because the person who cannot say no eventually loses the ability to say yes to the life they truly want. And that is a price far too expensive to pay. The fourth behavior that quietly teaches people your worth may be the most painful one to practice. Stop chasing people who aren't choosing you. Most people believe that persistence is always admirable. If I try harder, if I give more, if I become more understanding, they'll finally appreciate me. But human nature doesn't usually work that way. In fact, the harder you chase someone who has already decided to walk away, the more valuable they begin to feel and the less valuable you appear. This doesn't happen because you're weak. It happens because people naturally value what has confidence enough to stand on its own. Robert Greene explains that people are constantly observing emotional dependence. The person who needs the relationship more usually has less influence within it. This applies to friendships, romantic relationships, business partnerships, even families. The more your happiness depends entirely on one person, the more power you unknowingly hand over to them. Think about how many people lose themselves trying to keep someone else. They ignore disrespect, they excuse broken promises, they forgive the same behavior over and over again. Not because they believe it's acceptable, but because they're terrified of being alone. Eventually, they stop asking, "Is this person good for me?" and start asking, "How can I stop them from leaving?" The moment that question replaces the first, you've already abandoned your own worth. Here's something most people never realize. You cannot convince someone to value you by proving your value. People don't appreciate endless availability. They appreciate authenticity, respect, standards, and emotional independence. Imagine watering a plant every single day, giving it sunlight, protecting it from every storm. But the plant never grows. No matter how much effort you invest, nothing changes. Would you continue forever? Of course not. Yet many people do exactly that with relationships. They pour years of emotional energy into people who have shown through consistent actions that they simply aren't interested. Not because they're patient, but because they're afraid to let go. Greene reminds us that actions reveal truth more clearly than promises. Someone may tell you they care. Someone may promise they'll change. Someone may say all the right words. But if their behavior never changes, believe the behavior, not the words. Human beings often fall in love with potential. They become attached to who someone could become instead of accepting who they consistently are. This creates endless disappointment because reality rarely follows imagination. The strongest people understand something incredibly difficult. Closure doesn't always come from another person. Sometimes closure is the moment you finally accept what reality has been showing you all along. You stop chasing explanations. You stop demanding answers. You stop asking why. Instead, you quietly move forward. There is tremendous power in walking away with dignity. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself too. Many people believe walking away means losing, but staying in situations where you are constantly undervalued is the real loss. Every day you spend begging for someone's attention is another day you could have invested in becoming someone you genuinely admire. Think about successful people. Do they force opportunities? Do they beg clients? Do they desperately convince everyone to believe in them? No, they improve themselves, they create value, they become so grounded in who they are that the right people naturally recognize it. The same principle applies to your personal life. Your energy should never be spent convincing people to respect you. Respect cannot be negotiated, it can only be observed. If someone repeatedly shows that they don't value your time, believe them. If they constantly disappear until they need something, believe them. If they only appreciate you when they're afraid of losing you, believe them. People reveal themselves through consistency, not through occasional moments of kindness. This doesn't mean becoming cold or emotionally distant. It means refusing to chase relationships that require you to abandon your dignity. Healthy relationships are built on mutual effort, mutual respect, mutual choice, not one person constantly proving their worth while the other simply receives it. The irony is that the moment you stop chasing everyone, you become far more attractive. Why? Because confidence creates space. Neediness creates pressure. People naturally move toward those who appear emotionally complete on their own. Not because those people reject others, but because they don't desperately need validation to feel valuable. Your worth is never determined by who stayed or who left. It is determined by whether you remained loyal to yourself through both. Because the people who are truly meant to be part of your life will never require you to sacrifice your self-respect just to keep them there. And that is one lesson every emotionally powerful person eventually learns. The fifth behavior that quietly teaches people your worth is one that almost nobody practices anymore. Become comfortable with silence. We live in a world that fears silence. The moment a conversation becomes quiet, someone rushes to speak. The moment a text isn't answered immediately, people become anxious. The moment there is nothing happening, most people instinctively reach for their phones. Silence has become uncomfortable. Yet throughout history, the people who carried the greatest influence often spoke the least. Why? Because silence creates presence. Words create information, but silence creates curiosity. Robert Greene often explains that power is closely connected to mystery. The more predictable you become, the easier you are to control. The more you reveal every thought, every emotion, and every plan, the less people feel the need to understand you. You become completely readable, and what is completely readable rarely appears powerful. Think about two different people. The first person speaks nonstop. Every opinion is shared, every future plan is announced, every success is immediately posted online, every frustration becomes public. Within minutes, everyone knows exactly what they're thinking. The second person speaks when necessary. They listen more than they talk. They don't feel the need to fill every pause. They don't reveal every goal before it's accomplished. Which person naturally creates more respect? Usually the quieter one. Not because silence itself is magical, but because self-control is. Silence demonstrates emotional security. It tells people, I don't need constant attention to feel important. Many people talk excessively because they're uncomfortable with being misunderstood. They want everyone to know their intentions, their opinions, their reasons, their emotions. But the more they speak, the more opportunities they create to be judged. Sometimes, the strongest statement is no statement at all. Imagine someone insults you during a meeting. Everyone expects an immediate reaction. Instead, you simply look at them, remain calm, and continue the discussion. Suddenly, the room becomes uncomfortable, not because of your silence, but because everyone is forced to think about what just happened. Your composure speaks louder than any argument could. Silence often transfers pressure back to the other person. Emotionally reactive people expect emotional reactions. When they don't receive one, they become uncertain. This is why negotiators, leaders, judges, and highly respected individuals often master the art of strategic silence. After asking an important question, they wait. After making a decision, they wait. After hearing criticism, they wait. That pause changes the entire emotional dynamic, because patience communicates confidence. Impatience communicates insecurity. Many people unknowingly reveal everything simply because they cannot tolerate silence. During interviews, business meetings, dates, friendships, they keep talking until they accidentally reveal information they never intended to share. Not because anyone forced them, but because silence made them uncomfortable. Greene reminds us that observation requires quiet. If you're always speaking, you're never collecting information. While you're explaining yourself, someone else is studying you. While you're trying to impress, someone else is noticing your insecurities. The quiet observer usually understands the room better than the loudest speaker. There's another reason silence creates respect. It shows discipline. Anyone can react immediately. Anyone can interrupt. Anyone can defend themselves. Very few people can remain calm enough to choose their words carefully. Think about moments when you later regretted something you said. How many of those regrets happened because you waited too long before speaking? Probably very few. Most regrets happen because words outran wisdom. Silence protects wisdom. It gives your mind time to separate emotion from logic. It prevents unnecessary conflict. It allows you to hear what others are truly saying. And sometimes it reveals what they were trying to hide. This doesn't mean becoming distant or cold. Healthy communication is still essential. But emotionally powerful people understand that every thought doesn't deserve immediate expression. Some thoughts should remain thoughts. Some battles deserve no response. Some criticisms deserve no defense. Some conversations end more powerfully with a smile than with another sentence. Here's a question worth asking yourself. When you speak, are you adding value or are you simply trying to escape silence? That single question changes everything, because people don't remember those who spoke the most. They remember those whose words carried weight, and words carry weight only when they are supported by silence. When people realize you don't speak just to be heard, but only when something meaningful needs to be said, they begin listening more carefully, not because you demanded attention, but because your restraint earned it. That is the quiet power of silence, and few behaviors communicate inner confidence more clearly. There is one habit that silently destroys self-worth more than almost anything else. It isn't failure, it isn't rejection, it isn't criticism, it is living for validation. The moment your confidence depends on other people's approval, you hand them control over your emotions. Most people don't realize how often they seek validation. They post something online and immediately check who liked it. They make a decision but still ask 5 different people if it's the right one. They buy things to impress people they don't even like. They change their personality depending on who they're talking to. Little by little, their identity disappears. They become a reflection of everyone else's expectations. Robert Greene reminds us that human beings naturally crave acceptance. There is nothing wrong with wanting to belong. The problem begins when belonging becomes more important than being authentic. Imagine a tree. No matter how strong its branches are, if its roots are weak, the first storm will knock it down. Your self-worth works exactly the same way. If your confidence is rooted in compliments, criticism will destroy you. If it's rooted in popularity, rejection will break you. If it's rooted in success, failure will define you. But if your confidence comes from your own principles, very little can shake you. This is why emotionally powerful people don't constantly ask, "Do people like me?" Instead, they ask, "Am I living according to my values?" Those are completely different questions. One gives your power away, the other keeps it. There will always be people who misunderstand you. Some will criticize you no matter what you do. Some will envy your progress. Others will doubt your dreams simply because they lack the courage to pursue their own. If you try to satisfy everyone, you'll eventually lose yourself. The strongest people accept a difficult truth. Not everyone is supposed to understand you. And that's perfectly fine. Your purpose isn't to convince everyone. Your purpose is to become someone whose actions speak louder than opinions. Which brings us to the final behavior, perhaps the most important of all. Be relentlessly consistent. People don't trust occasional excellence. They trust predictable character. Anyone can be kind for one day. Anyone can appear disciplined for 1 week. Anyone can seem confident during one successful moment. But consistency, that's what earns lasting respect. Imagine two people. The first works hard for 3 days, then quits for 2 weeks, gets motivated, then disappears again, promises change, then returns to old habits. The second improves just 1% every day. No dramatic announcements, no need for attention, no excuses, just quiet discipline. 1 year later, which person commands more respect without question? The second, because consistency creates credibility. Human beings don't believe promises. They believe patterns. Your habits eventually become your identity. Every morning you choose discipline over comfort. You strengthen your character. Every time you keep your word, people trust you a little more. Every time you remain calm under pressure, your reputation quietly grows. This is why greatness rarely looks dramatic. It usually looks repetitive. Wake up, work, learn, improve, rest, repeat. Day after day, month after month, year after year. While everyone else is searching for shortcuts, you build something much more valuable, a reputation. And here's the beautiful part. Reputation cannot be bought. It cannot be borrowed. It cannot be faked forever. Eventually, character always becomes visible. Robert Greene teaches that people reveal themselves through repeated behavior. The exact same principle applies to you. If you repeatedly act with integrity, people notice. If you consistently protect your boundaries, people notice. If you remain emotionally calm, people notice. If your words match your actions, people notice. You never have to announce your worth. People discover it naturally. So let's remember the 7 behaviors that quietly teach people your worth. First, stop explaining yourself to everyone. Second, master your emotions instead of allowing them to master you. Third, learn to say no without guilt. Fourth, stop chasing people who refuse to choose you. Fifth, become comfortable with silence. Sixth, never seek validation from people who cannot recognize your value. And seventh, be relentlessly consistent in your principles, your habits, and your character. These behaviors won't make everyone like you, and they aren't supposed to. Their purpose is far greater than popularity. They help you become someone who respects themselves. Because the truth is, people eventually treat you the way you consistently teach them to treat you. Not through speeches, not through arguments, not through demands, but through your daily behavior. The greatest form of power is not controlling other people. It is controlling yourself. The greatest form of confidence is not proving your worth, it is knowing it without needing applause. And the greatest form of respect is the respect you build within yourself long before the world ever notices. When that happens, everything changes, because the world rarely values someone before they value themselves. So don't chase attention, don't beg for approval, don't shrink yourself to fit into places where you no longer belong. Stand firm, stay disciplined, protect your peace, and let your actions become the loudest introduction you'll ever make. Thank you for watching. If this message challenged the way you think, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep mastering yourself, because true power always begins within.